The night the thunder began, the town of Renfield was already uneasy. Storm clouds knotted across the sky in unnatural swirls, blacker than ink, and the air felt thick, like a weight pressing on your lungs. Doors rattled in their frames even before a single thunderclap. In the old McAllister house, 14-year-old Lena sat by the window, watching lightning forks carve white cracks in the horizon. Her mother was away for the evening. Lena told herself she'd be safe, though something deep in her bones whispered otherwise. Lightning struck a distant tree, the flash so bright her breath caught. She jumped, and the house plunged into darkness, the power gone. The wind rasped at the window panes. Lena grabbed her phone and flicked on the flashlight, its beam shivering as raindrops pelted the panes. She could just make out the silhouette of the oak grove behind the yard, trees bending under gusts. She pressed closer to glass, straining to see, and there, beyond the branches, a figure stood in the rain, motionless, face hidden in shadow, her heart hammered. She frowned, leaning in, convinced it must be a stranger seeking shelter, or a passerby caught in the storm. With trembling fingers, she unlocked the phone to call someone, anyone. The screen lit up, but the call wouldn't go through, no signal. That's when the figure took one step forward, and suddenly the rain seemed to fall harder, louder, hissing around the edges of the window. Lena's breath fogged the glass, and the figure vanished as though swallowed by the storm that and the next instant, a window upstairs shattered with a rush of wind and cold water. Glass sprayed inward. Lena recoiled, yelping, pressing her body flat against the floor. A distant crash echoed, perhaps the barn in the backyard, or a large branch coming down. She had to move, to hide. She crawled into the corridor, the flashlight beam dancing across peeling wallpaper, the walls pulsating with the sound of thunder. The old house moaned around her, as if alive, groaning with every gust. She reached the foot of the staircase when a whisper slid through the darkness. Faint, static-laced, it sounded like her own name, Lena. The voice cracked with the thunder, rising and falling with the storm's rhythm. She froze, the flashlight trembling in her hand. The house held its breath. Then, from above, another crash, maybe footsteps. She couldn't tell. In that moment, she realized there was no longer just a storm outside, something else had come into her home. She raised the flashlight upward. The next scene would begin with what she sees on that stairwell. The beam of Lena's flashlight quivered as it cut through the dark stairwell. Each step upward creaked like a warning. Dust floated in the beam, swirling like fine ash, and somewhere above, something dragged softly across the wooden floor. She swallowed hard, whispering her mother's name even though she knew she was alone. Her own voice sounded foreign in the stillness, thin and frightened against the booming sky outside. Then another voice answered. Faint, distant, yet unmistakable. It whispered her name again. Only this time, it came from inside her mother's room. Her legs trembled as she climbed. With every step, thunder rattled the windows, almost rhythmic, 3 booms, a pause, then one sharp crack. By the time she reached the top landing, the wind had forced open the door to her mother's room. Curtains flailed like trapped birds. The flashlight beam swept across the room, the bed, the dresser, the closet, nothing unusual at first. But when she turned toward the window, she froze. Wet footprints led from the window frame straight toward the door. Bare feet. Human. Fresh. And yet the window was still shut from the inside. Lena's breath hitched. She followed the prints with her light. They stopped just inches from where she stood. She spun around instinctively, but no one was there. The flashlight flickered. A low hum filled her ears, almost like static. She raised the phone again to check the time, but the screen glitched, showing flickering weather alerts. Only this one didn't come from any app she had installed. It simply read. He stands in the rain. He waits. Her hand trembled so hard the phone nearly slipped from her fingers. The message blinked once, and vanished. A sudden knock echoed from downstairs, sharp, deliberate, 3 times. Then silence. Lena gripped the railing, forcing her voice to steady. "Who's there?" she called out. The reply came not from the front door, but from behind her, a slow tap on the window glass. She turned. A streak of lightning lit up the outside world for a single second, revealing that same figure from earlier, now closer, his hand pressed flat against the pane, water running down his face like melted glass. He didn't blink. He didn't move. Then, in the next thunderclap, he was gone again, leaving only a handprint. Lena stumbled backward, dropping the flashlight. It rolled across the floor, spinning its beam wildly. The room warped with moving shadows as if something unseen walked between flashes of light. She ran from the room, heart pounding, the storm outside growing louder, almost angry. In the hall below, she could hear the front door slowly creak open on its own. The wind didn't push it, it opened inward. The storm was no longer just outside. The wind roared through the open front door like a living thing. Curtains billowed, papers swirled across the hallway, and thunder rattled the floor beneath Lena's feet. She crept down the staircase, every step groaning beneath her. The flashlight had gone dim, its beam narrow and fading, but she could still see the door, wide open, rain slanting through like a silver curtain. She hesitated halfway down, calling out again, her voice trembling. "Who's there?" Only the storm replied, echoing her words back in fragments. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, no signal, but a new notification blinked across the cracked screen. It was a voice memo labeled Recording 001. She didn't remember ever making one. Against every instinct, she pressed play. Through static and heavy rainfall, she heard her own voice whisper, panicked, as if speaking from inside the walls. "Don't go to the door. He's there." Then, after a burst of distortion, another voice spoke, deeper, slower, almost metallic. "He's already inside." Lena's hands went numb. The door swung wider, and the flashlight flickered out entirely. She stood frozen in total darkness as another sound joined the thunder, the slow squelch of wet footsteps on the hardwood floor. Somewhere in the dark, something was moving toward her. The storm's rumble grew so loud it felt like the whole house was breathing. She could smell rain and dirt, but beneath it, something else, rot. She turned toward the door, ready to run, when a flash of lightning revealed a man standing in the entryway. His soaked clothes clung to a face blurred by the downpour, his eyes a milky white that seemed to catch the lightning and hold it. He stepped forward, silent, his shape briefly flickering, like the storm itself was projecting him. Lena stumbled back up the steps, grabbed the heavy doorframe, and slammed the door with all her strength. The echo was deafening. But when she leaned against it, panting, she could still feel resistance, a faint pressure on the other side, like someone pressing back. She twisted the lock, pulled again, and realized it wasn't closing completely. There was something jammed in the crack. She looked down. A muddy handprint smeared the wood, fingers long and dripping. Desperation surged through her. She threw the bolt, grabbed a nearby chair, and wedged it beneath the handle. For a moment, silence, only her ragged breathing and the distant rumble of thunder. Then, faintly, her phone buzzed again. Another message. Only one word this time. "Run." And then the lights, though the power had been out for an hour, flickered on by themselves. When the lights flickered back on, the world outside had gone eerily quiet. Rain still fell, but softer now, a whisper instead of a roar. Lena's flashlight rested uselessly at her feet, water pooling around her shoes. She leaned against the wall, shaking, eyes fixed on the closed door. The muddy handprint was gone. Only clean wood remained. She didn't remember wiping it off. For a moment, she wondered if her mind was unraveling. Maybe she'd imagined it all, the man, the voice, the footsteps. But the air still smelled of wet soil and rot, and deep inside, she knew the storm wasn't done. Her phone buzzed again, this time, not from her own number. A contact she didn't recognize, Doc Harper. The message was simple. If you're still at the old McAllister place, don't go outside. I'm coming. Lena stared at the screen, confused. Her mother had mentioned the name once, Dr. Samuel Harper, a local historian who'd studied the Renfield phenomenon. Supposedly, decades ago, a storm like this had rolled through the same valley, same pattern, same damage, same strange disappearances. The adults never talked about it anymore. But Lena remembered hearing whispers at school, about people seen walking into the rain and never walking out. Thunder rolled again, closer this time, even though the rain had slowed. She crept toward the window, peeking out. The clouds swirled unnaturally above the town, rotating in a perfect circle, an eye in the storm. Every few seconds, a lightning bolt flashed inside it, illuminating something enormous and shifting within the clouds, as though something alive was turning above them. The streetlights along the road flickered in sync, one by one, like a heartbeat pulsing through the valley. Then, headlights appeared in the distance. A car pushing through the rain, tires skidding across the muddy path. It stopped right at the gate. The driver's door opened, and a tall man in a soaked raincoat stepped out, waving a flashlight toward the house. Lena. His voice was rough, carried by the wind. Stay where you are. Don't look at him. She hesitated, calling back, who? But her words were lost to the thunder. The man ran toward the porch, and just as he reached it, lightning split the sky directly overhead. For an instant, both he and Lena saw the figure again, standing at the far edge of the field, facing them, hands at his sides, motionless. When the flash faded, the man in the raincoat was gone. Only his flashlight remained on the ground, flickering weakly in the puddles. Lena pressed her hand to the window, trembling, heart slamming in her chest. Her phone buzzed again, this time showing a new message from Doc Harper. That wasn't me. And then, from somewhere deeper in the house, a door slowly opened. The power had gone out hours ago, but the storm hadn't moved an inch. Lena sat in the dark, the flicker of her phone the only light left. She'd tried to leave twice, only for her car to die the moment she turned the key, as though something outside refused to let her go. Thunder rolled low over the house, deep and constant, like an enormous drum beating beneath the earth. She could feel it in her chest more than she could hear it. Desperate for distraction, she turned her phone back on and opened the last voicemail from the number that had been texting her all week, the one claiming to be Dr. Samuel Harper. The audio was barely audible beneath a roar of static, but she caught pieces. It isn't a storm, it's residual, it remembers frequency, 1953. McAllister Field Test, her name followed, distorted, drawn out through interference. Linnea, the line cut off. The storm outside flashed white, blinding, and the sound of rain suddenly reversed, like thousands of drops rising instead of falling. Lena stood frozen. The walls seemed to expand and contract with the thunder. From the basement, that humming sound returned, low, pulsing, rhythmic. It almost sounded like a generator, but too deep, too alive. She grabbed a flashlight and crept down the narrow stairs, dust swirling in the beam. The air grew colder with each step until her breath became visible. The hum turned into something else, whispering, layered, hundreds of voices overlapping, all saying the same word, listen. She found an old shelf covered in dust. On it sat a metal box labeled Echoes_1953. Inside was a single reel-to-reel tape and a cracked headset. The moment she lifted the tape, the storm thundered violently above, shaking the entire foundation. For a brief second, every monitor in the house, unplugged, lifeless, flickered on. Across all screens appeared the same phrase, looping in grainy text. The storm is a recording. Lena dropped the headset and bolted upstairs. But as she reached the top step, the flashlight dimmed and went out. From behind her, in the dark basement, a voice whispered clearly, no static, no distortion. Just a calm, human voice. You finally found it. The house had gone deathly still. Only the rain tapping on the windows broke the silence. Lena stood frozen at the base of the stairs, eyes locked on the open basement door. Cold air drifted up from below, smelling faintly of iron and something old, like damp stone. She gripped her dying flashlight and whispered into the darkness, "Hello?" The echo of her own voice returned seconds later, but warped, stretched, as though someone else was repeating it back to her. She descended one step, then another. The boards moaned beneath her weight. As the flashlight beam swept over the basement walls, it caught glints of metal, old boxes, rusted tools, and rows of shelves covered in dust. At the far end of the room stood an ancient reel-to-reel recorder, its wheels slowly turning despite the lack of power. A low hum came from its speakers. On the table beside it lay dozens of labeled tapes, each marked with a year, 1953, 1968, 1991. 2014, the last one, unmarked, was still recording. The red light blinked. Lena pressed stop and hit play. Static filled the basement, followed by voices overlapping, desperate, terrified whispers. "He's coming back. Don't look at him when the lightning hits." Another voice cut through, deeper, older, a man's voice. "This isn't weather. It's a gate." The sound warped and faded into heavy breathing and the faint rumble of thunder, but this thunder didn't sound natural. It pulsed in intervals, like the heartbeat she'd heard through her phone earlier. She stared at the recorder in horror, realizing it was recording live. The hum deepened. Somewhere behind her, something moved, a dragging sound across the floor, slow and wet. She turned, shining her flashlight toward the noise, but the light dimmed instantly, like something was sucking its energy away. The shadows shifted at the far corner, gathering into a darker shape, human-like, but taller, its head brushing the beams of the low ceiling. It leaned forward slightly, and for the first time, Lena heard it breathe, a deep, rattling exhale that misted the air like smoke. Then, the reel began spinning faster, replaying her own voice from moments ago, "Hello?" Followed by that same warped echo, "Hello." Panicking, she stumbled backward, knocking over a stack of metal boxes. The sound shattered the silence, and the figure froze. A flash of lightning lit the basement window, and for a split second, she saw the face. Pale, featureless, as if sculpted from rain. Then darkness returned. The recorder stopped spinning. All the tapes fell from the shelves at once, clattering to the floor like a wave of metal. She ran up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut behind her, pressing her body against it as thunder roared overhead. Her phone buzzed again, another message from Doc Harper. "If you found the tapes, you need to listen to 1953. That's where it started." Lena looked down. One of the tapes had fallen beside her foot, cracked open, magnetic film spilling out, and burned into its label, faint but visible, was the same word she'd seen before on her phone. 1953 tape. Lena sat on the floor, back pressed against the locked basement door, heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. The house creaked with every gust of wind, as if listening with her. On the floor beside her lay the cracked tape labeled 1953. She hesitated only a moment before retrieving the old reel-to-reel recorder from the basement steps. The metal was ice cold, yet when she plugged the cord into the wall, the machine sputtered to life. Even though the power had gone out again minutes earlier, the reels began to spin. Static filled the air, followed by muffled breathing. Then, a man's voice, calm at first, scholarly, though the edges trembled with exhaustion. Day 12. The storm returned last night. Same formation. Same electrical frequency. Every strike lands in the same grid pattern. It's not weather, it's design. Papers rustled, and another man's voice cut in, younger, anxious. "We lost Thomas. He walked into the field after the third lightning burst. Said he saw someone out there, someone calling his name." The older man replied softly, "The pattern is repeating. It's feeding off us." Lena felt cold crawl up her spine. The voices continued, growing more frantic. "If anyone finds this, the eye is the key. It watches through the rain. Do not look directly at the flashes, they're windows. The entity manifests through reflected light. Thunder cracked overhead, startling her. She froze the reel, staring toward the window. Outside, lightning flared, but the reflection that appeared in the glass wasn't hers. It was a man's, older, soaked, mouth open as if shouting something she couldn't hear. When the light faded, the reflection remained for a few seconds longer than it should have, and then vanished. She hit play again with shaking hands. The voice on the tape now screamed, urgent, distorted. The McAllister girl opened the door. It's inside the house. The reel screeched, spinning faster until it snapped, the tape unraveling in a snarl of brown ribbon. Silence fell, broken only by the faint patter of rain on the windows. Lena stared at the recorder, her breath short and fast. The McAllister girl. That was her mother's maiden name. Her phone buzzed violently in her hand. The message came through without a number attached. It always starts with a McAllister. As she read those words, the lights throughout the house blinked, once, twice, then turned blood red. Somewhere upstairs, a door slammed hard enough to rattle the walls. And beneath the floorboards, the low hum started again, that deep, rhythmic pulse that sounded far too much like breathing. The red light flickered across the walls like a warning siren. Lena staggered to her feet, clutching the old tape reel, her breath shaking. The storm outside had gone strangely still, no thunder now, just the heavy hum of the clouds pressing down over Renfield. Her mother's photo hung crooked on the wall, lightning reflected faintly in the frame. Beneath it, a drawer sat half open, as if disturbed. Inside, she found yellowed letters sealed in plastic, the paper brittle and fragile. They were signed by Dr. Samuel Harper, the same name that had been messaging her. Each letter mentioned Project Echo, a classified weather experiment conducted in Renfield in 1953. Harper's handwriting was erratic, words underlined in ink that had bled over time: electromagnetic resonance, sound wave synchronization, energy entity manifestation. One note made Lena freeze. Test subject, M. McAllister, female, age 19. Unresponsive post-exposure. Residual phenomenon active. Her heart dropped. That was her grandmother's name, Mara McAllister. She rifled through the papers, finding old photos stapled to the reports, images of the McAllister farmhouse surrounded by strange antenna-like poles, glowing faintly in stormlight. In one photo, a blurry figure stood near the barn, tall and indistinct, like a man sculpted from mist. The caption beneath read, Echo Type 3 Manifestation, Sustained Presence, 47 seconds. That's when her phone vibrated again. A new message flashed. You're living in the test site. And then another, I'm outside. A car horn blared once, followed by pounding on the front door. Lena ran to the window and saw a man, older, with a soaked trench coat, waving his flashlight. Lena, it's me, Dr. Harper, he shouted over the wind. Open the door, quickly. She hesitated. The storm had gone eerily silent again, no rain, no thunder. Just stillness. He banged again, desperate. Please, child, you're in danger. She took one cautious step toward the door, and lightning flashed outside. For less than a second, the light exposed his face, and his reflection in the glass beside him. The reflection didn't move. It just stared back at her, smiling. When the light faded, he was gone. Only the echo of the knock remained, reverberating through the air like a hollow drumbeat. The phone in her hand lit up one last time, a voicemail notification. She pressed play, heart trembling as Harper's real voice came through, distorted by static. Lena, if you see me outside, don't open the door. That's not me. It's what we built. The thunder returned all at once, loud enough to shake the floorboards, a chorus of cracks and rumbles converging above the house. The lights burst, plunging everything back into darkness. And from outside, just beyond the porch, something began knocking again, slower this time, patient. The knocking wouldn't stop. Each thud rattled the door like a heartbeat, slow and deliberate. Lena gripped the flashlight, its beam trembling across the hallway. The house groaned, the walls flexing as if breathing. Somewhere above her, the roof creaked under the weight of gathering rain, though when she looked out the window, the storm clouds were completely still. No rain. No movement. Just a thick, swirling mass of gray that seemed to watch her. She turned back toward the recorder on the floor. Even though it was unplugged, the reels were spinning again, backward this time. The voice on the tape returned, distorted beyond recognition. You opened the circuit, it's awake again, it knows you're listening. Her flashlight flickered. She swept the beam across the living room, catching movement, a shimmer near the far wall, like heat bending the air. It rippled outward, forming a tall, translucent silhouette. The outline of a man, shoulders hunched, hands trembling, head cocked as if studying her. Then came the sound, a low hum that rose and fell like thunder muffled underwater. The same sound she'd heard through the basement floor. Her phone buzzed violently. Another message from Harper appeared, time-stamped 10 minutes in the future. If you see the eye, don't let it look through you. It feeds on attention. Hide your reflection. She turned toward the mirror by the stairs, and froze. Lightning flashed outside, and in the reflection, she saw herself standing perfectly still, but her reflection's eyes were glowing faint white, like cloud lightning trapped inside glass. The figure in the corner began to move. Slowly at first, one dragging step, then another. As it walked, the lights along the walls flickered in rhythm with its movements. She stumbled backward, knocking over a lamp. The hum deepened, turning into a voice that wasn't made of sound but vibration. Mara McAllister made me. Now you'll finish what she started, Lena screamed, darting into the kitchen, slamming the door behind her. The air around her vibrated, dishes rattling in the cupboards. On the wall, faint burn marks appeared in branching shapes, lightning scars forming letters, EYE. Through the window above the sink, the storm finally broke. But it wasn't rain falling, it was ash, gray flakes drifting from the churning clouds. A bolt of lightning struck the field beyond the house, leaving behind a perfect glowing circle burned into the earth. The thunder that followed wasn't from the sky. It came from below. The house was trembling now, every nail screaming under the weight of thunder. Lena stumbled through the kitchen, the flashlight flickering out for good. She could still hear the hum, deeper than before, vibrating in her bones, sinking with her pulse. The ash outside turned to rain, black and heavy, streaking down the windows like ink. The glowing ring in the field pulsed with white light, each flash perfectly timed with her heartbeat. It wasn't random. It was calling her. On the counter lay the final letter she hadn't read, the one she'd pulled from her mother's photo frame. The edges were singed, but the words were clear. If the storm returns, the resonance can be broken only by one of our blood. The echo cannot exist without its origin. End it, before it ends the world. Her grandmother's signature followed, Mara McAllister. Lena's throat tightened. Her whole life had been a loop, moving back to Renfield, finding the tapes, hearing the hum. It had never been coincidence. It was inheritance. The floor split with a sound like tearing metal. From beneath the boards, a column of blue-white light shot upward, crackling like plasma. The air itself seemed to shatter. Lena shielded her eyes, stumbling toward the basement door. The voice came again, booming now, made of thunder and sorrow. You are the last frequency. The storm ends when you stop listening. The door flung open on its own, and for a brief instant, she saw the eye. It wasn't a creature, it was a vast, spinning vortex of light and static, shaped like a human outline but hollow in the middle. Through it, she saw flashes of the 1953 experiment, men in raincoats, lightning towers collapsing, her grandmother screaming as the sky folded inward. Lena stepped closer, tears mixing with the rain blowing in through broken windows. She lifted the old recorder from the table and pressed the record button. The reel spun, red light blinking. You fed on sound, she whispered, voice trembling. then choke on silence. She hurled the recorder into the beam. The hum peaked into a shriek of static, the lights exploded, and the eye twisted, collapsing inward like a storm imploding. Every window shattered at once. For a moment, there was nothing, no thunder, no rain, no wind. Just stillness. When Lena woke, it was dawn. The field outside was scorched black, smoke rising from the circle that had once pulsed with light. The sky above Renfield was finally clear, not a single cloud. Her phone, half melted, buzzed once. A single message blinked on screen. Transmission complete. Then it went dark. Weeks later, when investigators arrived, they found no trace of the house, only a wide ring of fused glass and the remnants of old recording equipment half buried in the earth. But on stormy nights, locals say they still hear faint static drifting through the thunder. And if you listen closely, a woman's voice whispering,